There we go. The recording has started, so we can get everybody's input. Okay. So question number 1 is we're talking about describing the state's current status and needs. So given the progress and the promising practices coming from the Connecticut State Department of Ed in the last year, and we've listed some of those above, are there any other unidentified needs you would like to mention? In particular, what other needs should be accounted for when it comes to student populations most impacted by the pandemic?
So you can unmute yourself, or you could raise your hand and start talking.
Laura?
So I participated in a very similar meeting with Waterbury Board of Ed recently, and something that I kept hearing from the teachers was the need for support, emotional support and social emotional work with the teachers and the staff at the schools.
Excellent.
Thank you.
That's in addition to working with students. Are you specific to the social emotional welfare of the staff is what you're talking about?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
They had highlighted the social emotional needs of students, but it wasn't specifically listed as the teachers and staff, and there's definitely a need for that.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm trying to find my written comments to be concise, so give me 2 seconds if someone else wants to go.
Eileen was.
Yes, one of the things I'd like to say also in Waterbury is we were, given so many new programs, but not enough time to learn the program before you have to jump right into it. So a little bit of timing, maybe like a PD with something in it, so that we can learn the program. You're introduced to it and have to jump in.
So could you elaborate a little bit more about an example of the type of program?
Like with CAMI, all the different programs, breakout rooms, CAMIs. We were given it, by the gentleman that's in charge of IT in our building. And then we jumped into it, and then we'd have like a 1 to 2 hour meeting after school, but that would be on something different rather than letting us practice, and learn it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna give my feedback. So one of the things, we've been thinking about this a lot. So Severa Gordon from ConCan, I think there's many things that we think should be done, and I'll just kind of give you a couple of the examples that we've been looking at or thinking about. One is really thinking about how to leverage the federal funding to ensure that districts to just really encourage districts to facilitate long-term systemic changes in education. For example, like how can we sustain or create best practices around reshaping the school day or the school year to like fit with what we need for the future. Also thinking about, how can we leverage through the partnerships, like increasing tutoring and making sure that every child who needs access to a tutor can have a tutor. And then finally thinking about like how are we supporting the social and emotional needs and the structures that exist in districts. I think one of the things, I'm not going to say, I think a critique of mine of Connecticut is like local control is great until you have a million different ways to do things. And in some places it works well. And I think there just needs to be access to collaborative processes that could ensure that those districts that are doing it really well can learn and lean on the districts that have where there's room for growth. And I mean, from our perspective, like the school year, school day is just built from the agrarian society, and it's going to be really tough to change that. But like if we did have an opportunity and a time to do so, like with the leadership of the department, I think not forcing anyone, but like creating best practices and structures to allow districts to move to meet the needs of parents instead of what the needs are of the system that was created forever ago.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
If not, I'll move on to question 2. Okay. All right. So question 2 is all around safely reopening schools and sustaining their safe operations and what that looks like. We've listed, and so I apologize for those that are on the phone. You may not have seen this, and I didn't read all of the slide to you before, but their State Department's approach so far prioritize keeping schools open, creating that suite of resources with tools and guidance to help districts, families, and communities maintain data on various learning models on the State Department's data portal of EdSite, and establish that in-person learning will be a priority for 21-22. Given those pieces that have been started, how might the State Department best support school districts in sustaining their safe operations and preparing for fall of 2021?
I don't want to be the only person talking, but I have ideas.
You're more than welcome to talk, and then if people have something to add to it, they're more than welcome to add to it.
Okay, so one thing that I think is incredibly necessary, like I understand there's going to be a focus on in-person learning, which I completely support, but I think like getting an understanding around when you do move to remote, for example, like young kids won't be able to be vaccinated early on. So there might be outbreaks in the classroom. And I think it would be good to have like clear guidance on when you are going to remote, these are the things that have to happen. Because I think, as I mentioned before, it's like, you know, different districts have just done things differently. Some flip the classroom the next day after school's closed, others. So just like being able to be clear about what the expectations are for remote learning, that's when there's issues around safety. I think that's really important for us to lean into, because I just think a lot of parents are disappointed that there's not going to be a remote option in many school districts. We just want to make sure that they're continuing to feel like their students are kept safe no matter what's happening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Erin, Amy, Maddie, other thoughts? Are family members out there that have children, have your children been in school for the school year?
Mhm.
So I have 2.
Yes.
So they've been in school throughout the year?
Yes.
Okay, good. As have mine. They've been in school all year, so I'm thankful for that.
Me too.
I know, and they're at elementary level, so I do know that it's sometimes easier at the elementary level, working with cohorts and stuff like that to keep them in school. It's a little bit more difficult, I know, at the high school level.
So that makes me wonder what would be needed if I were the parent who maybe haven't sent, you know, I had the option of opting out for safety reason. What does the school need to do? Or, you know, how does the department support that school district so that I can feel safe sending my little one? I'm just curious.
Well, I know that on my mom's behalf, her main concern was the fact that our school would be closing down every couple weeks because it was something COVID related. So some sort of stability. And even while in school learning, they were still doing virtual.
Mhm.
So my sister, regardless of where she was going to be, she wasn't really learning anything. And my brother's in middle school. He rarely learned anything as well. He took his SBAC recently and he constantly asks for help. So there's that. And then personally, I feel like I haven't learned anything throughout the year since last year. And I'm a junior in high school at the moment.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Amy. Not always easy to talk in front of all these adults, so I appreciate your comments.
You know, Nitsa and Missy, if again, I apologize for the mask.
It's okay.
Also, coming from a private special education program, we also need to look at the social distancing because as somebody said, the kids will not be vaccinated before the fall anyway. So really providing those barriers, providing thoughts on where to get the barriers, the plexiglass barriers that we're using, those are very costly also. So providing schools with materials that keep distancing. And I know that PPEs for a while there, it was pretty difficult to maintain safe levels of PPE. I don't think that that is the case right now. So that was that has been solved, but creating environmental changes to keep kids from spreading the virus.
Thank you. Yes, my twins are 10 and I'm hoping that they will get their shots before September. I'm hoping. Okay, anything else on this end? Around reopening.
And safety.
I have one other thought from the previous slide that I needed to mention. I forgot that
Yeah.
a couple of parents have said this around devices. The initial round of devices, there's been a lot of, and now that almost every school district is open, there's been a lot of, I don't want to use the word mismanagement because that's not the right word, but just kind of parents have been saying they've brought back the computer. The district is saying they don't have the computer. So just maybe giving like best practices and guidance around like operationalizing devices, because it feels like in different districts are doing it differently. I've, not to throw Bridgeport out there, but we've had a lot of parents from Bridgeport say they brought the devices back and then they get a call from the school to say you have an outstanding device. And it's not the only district that that's happened, but I think like, once again, everyone's doing it their own way. So it just might be helpful to say, these are the best practices, not to force anyone around like keeping track of the devices so we can, because I assume, you know, we're going to continue to want everyone to have a device since we've led the nation in making that happen. I think it would be good to just ensure that we continue to have the devices and kids continue to have access to them.
I'll actually add that in there, that the kids should continue to have access to those devices for next year too. Thank you. Okay, any other thing for 2? I'm going to hop over to 3.
Waterbury has,
Whoops.
just to let you know, in Waterbury, they have said that the children are taking them home on the 16th for the summer.
So they are keeping them. Oh, nice, nice,
They are keeping them. It just came out this week.
nice.
Very nice. Very
Yep, very nice.
nice. Okay. All right.
So I have a question, if you can hear me okay.
Sure.
Yes.
Thanks so much. So I'm just wondering, it's Eileen Baker. I'm just wondering, so for the fall, will children still be wearing masks and teachers still wear masks?
According to what the governor just said, in the school system, that will continue.
Okay.
I think that a question of that nature has to be dealt with at each individual district. So
Yep.
I'm not sure how that's going to be managed, but
I just think from the scientific perspective, what are they, what's been sort of the word that's going to be statewide? I understand it should be district by district, but there's certain parameters that affect everyone.
I would agree with that. And I think we'll have to wait and see what comes down from the governor's office, as well as I think that
Missy,
he.
I'm happy to jump in.
Oh,
for sort of
thank
the
you,
state-
Chris.
Yeah, State's Department of Education. So we just actually released a memo today in light of the CDC requirements that says we are still going to require masks in schools for the rest of this school year. So, I mean, I think obviously we don't know what's going to happen for next school year yet and what this virus is going to look like. But I think, to use this memo that just came out, regardless that CDC says you can remove the mask inside, we're still going to require it for this year.
Yep, I would agree.
Thank
Thank
you. Okay. Number 3, we're halfway there. How's that?
Almost, we're there.
Maximizing state level funds to support students. We went through a lot of this at the beginning, although some of you may not have heard that introduction. So we've had 11 million of the ARP ESSER for summer programming grants. So that has to be there. Plans to provide statewide access to resources for core subject areas, and considering how funding can expand comprehensive after-school programs and a lot of what we've already had conversation about, the social, mental, and emotional health support. So given that, what ideas do you have to address the academic impact of lost instructional time, provide summer learning and enrichment program, and provide comprehensive after-school programs? Think about what this support will look like, how it addresses vulnerable students, and if it serves students who may have been the most disengaged this year. So there's a lot to unpack within that. So some thoughts about that.
I'll just stick with the theme and chat. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
Silver, do you want to unmute yourself?
Sure. I was gonna let you go. I'm letting someone else speak. That's
Okay, Betsy?
Okay, I was thinking in terms of teacher preparation, meaning workshops for teachers in regards to enhancing the problem solving, productive thinking, critical thinking. In other words, being able to reach using the Socratic dialogue by having opportunity for in-service. So the funding would be for the experts to be able to share that within the framework of professional development, so that they could reach everyone, being able to enhance from where they are and be open and willing to do the questioning technique. Higher order, HQI.
Correct.
HQ, okay.
okay. I'll
Go ahead.
hop in there. So I think there's a couple of things that when we think about the after-school programs, there's a few. So for kids who are considered vulnerable, I think we have to give them access to really high quality programming and not just creating an expansion of like daycare access, which I think can happen. So for example, and I don't know what the feasibility of getting this to happen, but like really having kids in our most needy communities have access to like robotics or STEM immersion programs, or even like thinking about arts, like things that are not generally embedded in the like traditional school day for some of these kids. And I think when we think about COVID and how it has had an impact on young people, the recovery piece of it, I think a lot of it is connected to academics, but when thinking about the social, emotional, and mental health supports, like some of that might be just having access to a piano lesson. And I don't know how to like really operationalize this, so I understand I'm throwing stuff out there, but there are high quality providers in districts that could be partners in getting kids access to some of these resources. And I also think for the summer, what's not clear, and like I've gotten the question a million times, is like, is a summer camp, is it free for everyone? Does it depend on how much you make? How are they determining who's going to be able to access it? I think the information is not really clear to parents, and like summer is now, right? Like we're ready to get kids signed up for summer, and we don't want to have those who might have been left behind feel like they're being penalized and they have to go to summer school because of the pandemic. So really to think about like fun, cool ways to embed STEM programs or reading programs or reading interventions into like, maybe not a sport, but just something that like kids like to do to help them recover from the pandemic and not feel like they're being penalized for not being where they need to be. And I know you guys really care about assessments, but like we don't need to lose sight of being able to assess where kids are, not from a punitive perspective, but like starting next year, we want to make sure like we know, and that information is shared with parents. I think a lot of times districts do the assessments and the parents are just not aware of where the voids are and what the gaps are, so they can help facilitate.
Thank you.
Anna?
You know, I'm sorry, Sabira, you stole my thunder. I was just shaking. Yeah, that's it. It is, we do have to, everything that she said, the program has to be extremely creative. It cannot be punitive. You know, the most vulnerable students, we need to meet them where they are. We need to have some meaningful functional activities. So any kind of a guidance or set expectation, perhaps from the state, and providing some resources to the programs that are willing to do this, whether it's after school or programming. In addition to that, it's really helping teachers and the staff, the members that are going to be working in these programs to look at the technology. There is so much in robotics now. I don't know how many of you heard of Movia. They have these cute little robots now. But to make it very, very interesting so the students will want to come and that it won't feel like a school, that it will feel, hey, it's summertime. I need to play now. But more than that, what we're seeing now when the kids, because we have been open since July of last year, but we are seeing all the kids that are now coming back. There is a change in them. We need to almost be retrained in how to meet them where they are right now. Because if we don't, the recovery won't be that easy. I don't know if it will be a recovery.
Thank you. Anyone else? So I was curious.
I have one thing. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte. I'm on the current Windsor Board of Education. And I just wanted to add that in our district, we have an Office of Family and Community Partnerships, and we have a Treehouse program where it's for students from pre-K through 5, and it offers after-school enrichment programs to engage the students, to hone in on their skills and develop more of their skills in the core classes as well. But in addition, it's a time where the students can also get together and improve on their social and emotional skills as well. And it does help to support the social and emotional well-being of the students as well. And I think it's great that the funds are offered as well. And I think maybe that's funding that could be a good allocation towards the Treehouse program and similar programs likewise, such as that. So I do thank you that those funds are available so that programs can continue for those students that need it.
Charlotte, you called them the Treehouse programs? Is that what you called it?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a
Treehouse.
Treehouse program.
Cool.
I see Judy.
Yeah, so I'm SDE, but I'm also a family advocate. So I wanted to just throw out this summer, a lot of amazing things are being planned for students. And I'm going to advocate for some family activities in the summer. So I know there's camp for kids. I'm going to advocate for family camp and some opportunities for the whole family to engage in, you know, these activities that are restorative. And then it's also an opportunity for the professionals and the families to build some relationships and start paving the way into the next school year. So to take a more holistic view of the student and the other people in that student's world and find a way to be inclusive.
Thank you, Judy. I'm not sure I'm ready for camping. I did that a long time ago.
Yeah, I would like the camping in
Things
the
I could
hotel.
do.
Yeah, that's camping in the hotel.
That's what I told my kids. That's the only place I camp. I'm sorry.
I think
We
that's called
digress.
glamping.
Yeah,
It's called glamping meets a glamping.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I was
Anna, did
curious
you have another question? Your hand is still up.
No, I don't think
No,
she.
okay.
But I was curious to ask, and I know, you know, maybe Amy, I'm putting you like on the spotlight, right? But I took notes on your answer, and it just got me thinking, what would this look like for you, right? What would this, how do we help students have this type of schooling that we're kind of schooling, for lack of a better word, asking what would support look like? And I don't know if she's on the line still, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Okay. Anybody else have something to add? Okay. All right. If I can find my mouse. Lisa, you want to lead us with number 4?
So number 4 is about planning for and meeting students' needs, right? So far we know that SDE has provided guidance or a roadmap to districts through setting those state level priorities and published guideline documents, right? They also have supported districts with ample technical support from different sources, and also engage in webinars and different types of communication to help districts in their development of their local plans. Having said all of this, how might you want SDE to support districts in developing high quality plans for their use of ARP ESSER funds? So what would that look like? How could SDE support districts? What would that look like in your mind or your plan?
I know the districts have to submit what they would like to do with the funds that they get. So if you're not part of the district planning committee, what kinds of things would you want to make sure that are on district plans to support students.
Right.
So what I've heard of, I think in East Hartford, for example, I know they're doing like a whole, there's a parent advisory group that they've created to like talk about like what's needed in the plan. And I don't know if that's happening across the state, but I think like really, I know it's encouraged that there should be some family engagement with the plans, but that once again can look differently in different districts depending on where you are. So like, I really appreciate the fact that SDE is doing a plan, and I hope that the department has the resources to reject plans that are not great. Sometimes I know resources are tight, but it really, if the plan is bad, I hope that there is a way to go back to those districts that have provided plans that are just not meeting the needs. The department gave kind of clear guidelines about what things that districts should be following. I've heard some really good ones, and I've heard some that are not so great. So I'm just hoping that that process can be really true, and there can be guidance that's provided to the superintendents to have them follow what they should be doing and not just what they think.
Thank you.
Other ideas? I know that we've talked about the parent advisory group. I don't know if Amy is still on, and I'll put my 2 cents in, even though I'm a facilitator and I probably shouldn't. But I hope on these advisory groups that there's also some student voice being heard. Nicole, I know you support me on this one.
Well, that's where I was going to go to, Missy, so, but that's okay.
We just had, and unfortunately I couldn't attend today, but Nicole just had a whole conference, youth conference today. So it made me think about the student voice and ensuring that they have something to say about where some of this money is being spent to support them. Any other thoughts? All right, well, gee.
Well, that was
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go
Yes.
I didn't know. I think I just unmuted myself, I hope. So yeah, I'm calling again from Old Saybrook. So I've been a proponent of student voice for probably 30 years. We're probably one of the first boards of education in the state to actually have a student reps on our Board of Education. And I think exactly what you're saying, student voice and student choice, and having students begin to really thinking about what is it that they feel like they've missed. But in Old Saybrook, they're really very much ahead of the game, and they're having a summer enrichment period for about a month, and all different kinds of classes for kids to take. And that's pretty exciting. And so credits, non-credit, getting kids to be together, how that's going to look, how that rolls out is just really, essential. And we're always getting at our Board of Education meetings how students feel about the pandemic, how it's affected them, how online learning, has been beneficial, lots of different ideas, and also ways to have project-based learning, not so much book-related.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good points. All right.
So number 5, educator workforce. So far, we know that SDE has recognized the need for well-qualified trained educator workforce. And I know some of you already talked a little bit about PD, made allowances for daily long-term substitutes an expansion of pathways for paraeducators, and in partnerships with Regional Education Service Center Alliance, developed a mentoring team program, invested as well in partnerships to inspire young generations from diverse populations to join the workforce. With these things happening, how might SDE support the educator workforce, both in supporting current educators to address academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs, and in recruiting a diverse pool of new educators to fill vacancies caused by the pandemic? So how can we support the educator workforce? What can SDE do? So this is like almost like a two-pronged question. So how do we have an educator workforce that supports the educators, the students, right? And how do we support them, and what ideas you might have in recruiting a diverse pool of new educators?
You've had some conversation already about providing professional development for educators, that thinking out of the box thing, as well as the tools and the technology, and making sure that everybody is trained in utilizing those things. So I think that speaks to some of that. But as Nitsa was saying, how do we get a diverse population of teachers in our workforce? Anna?
Hi. Okay. So yes, that besides the training and kind of making everybody a little more comfortable, also providing resources to create these mindful classrooms where the kids are going to be comfortable coming back. But besides that, as far as recruiting new folks into the field, it is tough out there. Again, coming from a private school where we're in competition with public schools, and we serve the most involved population of students, it is tough. Teachers are not that well prepared, and it's like creating programs, creative programs, where the schools partnering with higher ed to almost like residency programs, for lack of a better word. I'm just thinking of, so those that are not quite yet teachers may be working with SD. So why is SD involved? Because clearly these folks will be working as paraprofessionals because they're not certified at that point in time. But having some sort of residency certification or something like that, where they feel that they can take on a little bit more. And I think it would be beneficial for the schools as well. They're still working under a certified teacher. But again, this is kind of off the top of my head, not having truly worked the details. But looking at options really to create residency type programs for teachers.
Cool.
One of the things I'd like to say is we just hired a new young gal. She did her student teaching in Southington, and she just came to us in Waterbury. I'm, like I said, in a co-taught room for special ed. I'm a paraeducator, and with over 40 years experience, I've helped her. I've helped her in the 3 weeks that she's been there, literally. But I've already helped her to understand the kids, understand their needs, understand you don't know what they come to school with, what's on their plate when they leave their home or get off a bus. And she's very grateful, and she's really, I'm watching her. She's just grooming so beautifully to the point where she's almost looking seasoned, and she will be seasoned by the fall, so I think putting somebody in, I'm not saying with me or a paraeducator, but teaming her up with a you know, the head of like the 6th grade, I'm in 6th grade. So whoever's in charge of math, you know, the department head that's in that little group or something. It's important for her to get that input and her output. You know, you need to vent, especially when you didn't start until the end of April,
Right.
you know, but I mean,
So
I've
some
been there
type
for
of mentoring program so that you have
Exactly.
a specific mentor, one that's been there for a while that kind of knows the ropes can help people through that, but be a little bit more specific about giving the time to do that.
Exact.
Very good. Well, I want to thank you for assisting her. I wouldn't, as a former special ed teacher, I wouldn't survive without my paras. So I thank you for all your work.
You know, I love doing it. I love the kids. They keep me young. They keep me focused. I could retire forever, but I really love what I do.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
I was just going to say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I've been for a long time thinking about teacher preparation programs and how they're not preparing. I'm an educator, teachers for a little bit of the real world application. So there isn't, I happen to speak Spanish. I just happen to have a sensitivity for underserved communities, just part of my DNA. But if you have teachers that are going into training programs, there needs to be a course on, you know, parent-school partnerships. I mean, we have a wonderful, you know, Judy Carson, but a lot of teachers don't even really know how to have a parent conference. That's never, you know, that kind of real world application, or what does it mean to have an underserved community? It has lots of definitions, not just one. And so while the SERC is trying to address it, you know, and maybe it's through workshops and things they can do, but there's a bigger pool that I think needs to be addressed when teachers are considering teaching to make themselves more viable, so that they understand what they're getting into, because it's a huge challenge. And if you're not comfortable communicating with a family, then that's part of the success plan for a student. And so how does that work? And that can turn off a parent in a heartbeat, because sometimes there's a lot of politics going on in school systems. And so I often have felt that way, that there should be higher, and I brought this up at some of the state colleges. I don't know what, many years ago, you know, how long has it been since they took a look at their curriculum for teacher training? That's something, I don't know who gives the push for that, but that's, I think, something essential and needed and necessary. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I agree 100%. And I love the idea of the course for parent-school partnerships. I think it needs to go far beyond just a course, but I think that's a good place to start. But you really need to build that. So absolutely.
Anyone else? Were there?
And just to expand on that regarding the experiential learning opportunity. So in addition, if that included some type of professional development around equity training, and it could address the underlying barriers that some students experience with in access to education or technology, or anything that does create a barrier that certain educators or staff members may not be aware of, and then sometimes it trickles down into the classroom as well. So that training could certainly be helpful to any new educators entering the workforce too.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just got to thinking, Charlotte, based on your questions, and I was working at a place on Monday on a parent session, and this was a Spanish-speaking parent, she started crying. And, you know, I was taken aback because I was not expecting her to be crying. It wasn't about social emotional, it was about testing prep that the district wanted. And I asked her what is going on. And she said, my kid is very anxious about this SBAC, and I don't speak a lot of English. So I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. So I'm also anxious. So what type of educator can you imagine, think of, that can help this parent and that child? What would that look like?
So to me, in that situation, I guess you'd want an educator that is either familiar with that student in the classroom or assisting with the work, but also that can address the language barrier. And it shouldn't be seen as a setback for the child. It should be actually a benefit or like a plus because they're bilingual. And so that teacher professional should either reach out for support from other administration or so to do the best that they can to see how else they can accommodate that student based on them needing the translation to perform well and to actually show that they can perform similarly or higher with the other students as well. And of course, I would hope that the individual in that position would do their best that they can to maybe alleviate the parent and the child of any worries or concerns that they do have at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that there's some districts that use Language Line to interface with families. I don't know how supportive I am of that, but maybe SERC could start having a database of people around the state that may be educators that are not necessarily working full-time or on their skill set, so they could count on them and they could call them and say, hey, we have this situation here. Would you be willing to help out here? Because teachers are pretty slammed and they're pretty crunched. And, you know, sometimes there's an interfacing, and I was hired in a school system because I spoke Spanish, and they happened to have a Spanish family with a hearing impaired student. And it was terrific, but then you have to have the passion to want to connect with a family. You have to believe it's important, and they feel it. It's not just information, and they feel very, very connected. And they'll call you at 6:30 in the morning and say, is school closed? Because they can't read English necessarily or understand, you know, when it comes on a robocall. You know, so there are just a lot of different aspects of this that, you know, as the world changes, I just think, well, maybe that's just an idea, you know, that SERC might want to have a database for people that they can, you know, rely on or count on or help a district.
Well, we have Marjorie just joined us, and so she's from SERC, so we'll make sure that
she gets
incorporate
figured
that
out.
with her.
I'm taking notes.
Oh, sure. And anybody can connect with me, you know, I'd be glad to be of support in any way I can.
So that means you're the number one in the database?
It just means that, you know, that if you've done workshops and things for families and for schools, or, you know, just ways of being able to interface and being able to maybe be at a PPT and, you know, have somebody really understand what they're saying.
I have to just, because we got a little time here, we're running very early, but I was at a conference this morning on Life Course, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with what Life Course is, but it's a person-centered planning option that we have here in Connecticut. And so we had it comes out of Missouri. So there was a big conference thing down in Missouri. Of course, it was virtual for us, but we were sharing what we were doing in Connecticut. But at the beginning of the session, you know, they had these slides up, and every other slide was the same, but in Spanish. So you had, you know, step 5 was here in English, and then the next slide, it would just keep looping through. The next slide was step 5 in Spanish. And it was just, it was just awesome the way they did that. Now, I don't speak Spanish, so, you know, but I am sure that there were probably hundreds of people that were part of this conference that do. And so just reaching out to them, and they're very good about trying to get all of their documents into Spanish too. And I know that the State Department is trying very hard to get multiple languages and at least Spanish for many of their documents as part of secondary transition. I've seen that take place, but you know, it was just, I think it's, you know, Charlotte, it's really what you're talking about. It just needs to be what we do. And it just needs to be, Anna, we need to have somebody, you know, at SERC or somebody at the State Department, that if we are creating these things, it's just an automatic function that we also create slides in Spanish. And I'm not sure we'll get there, but maybe, I don't know, but I think it was just awesome to me today, and I saw that and I thought it was pretty cool. So, okay.
Sometimes you underestimate the literacy level. You know, not everybody that speaks another language is 100% literate. So you have to be careful a little bit of thinking that you can, you know, translate it just from English to Spanish or whatever language, and they're going to be like, okay, we're good to go, because some of those families do need that, you know, bilingual support.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much for permitting the input.
Thank you. Nicole, were you going to add?
I was just going to say, I think Anna raised her hand again. I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Anna.
Yes, I just wanted to add, you know, you mentioned, well, what should that educator look like, Nitsa, or who should that be? Well, first of all, we need to have our kids have educators that look like them and that either have gone through similar experiences or are empathetic, where they can understand these, that are willing to listen and are willing to acknowledge. And speak of, I mean, SERC, we have just gone through a diversity, equity, diversity, inclusion training with SERC. It is difficult, but it is absolutely wonderful. It just increased all of our awareness. And I think it will help us become a better school. And I wonder if that can become almost like a standard that, you know, it doesn't have to be SERC training. We just happened to contract with SERC, and it was very, very beneficial to us. But something to be done to just, you know, because when we look at that achievement gap, and it's not only the racial achievement gap, but it's, you know, even with the kids with special needs and everything else, I think some sort of diversity and equity and inclusiveness training would be very, very beneficial for all school districts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. All right. Any other thoughts?
Anyone want to add anything around how to hire or have a diverse pool of candidates?
Oops. What I wanted to do. I wanted to just bring it back here just to give you all 5 of them again, in case you had some thoughts before we go about something that you thought of that you wanted to make sure you address on either the, you know, safely reopening schools, or, you know, funds for supporting the students, maximizing student support, what that looks like, LEA plans. Our group is dwindling down a little bit.
Yeah, the group is a little tired.
Yes, well, I hear you.
Anything that you want to add in any of the 5, you know, educator workforce, planning a meeting for students' needs, maximizing the state level funds to support students. This almost feels like a wish list, but it's not a wish list. But let's assume any of these items are wish list, and there's like we have no barriers of asking for anything. Is there anything you would like to add?
I do have a question. So this came up many times in our district. And so a few individuals asked me directly, so I'll take this opportunity to ask and relay it. They wanted to check to see if and how so the SSR funds could be applied toward an adult education program. And rather than, I mean, of course, it's great for the K through 12. We wanted to see if any funds could be allocated for an adult education program.
I think maybe, is there someone here from the department that can answer that question?
Chris, any thoughts?
Yes, just about to chime in. So I have to double check the specifics, but as I think, as we all know, oh yes, and thanks for putting that email in there.
Yeah.
But as we all know, the you know, adult education programs still fall under the school district themselves. And so when we talk about ARP ESSER, there's no distinction there, you know, between adult education and, you know, your, I guess, comprehensive high school or whatever, you know, schools that you're talking about. So I don't foresee any restrictions there, but I can definitely double check and get an answer back.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I did put in chat, if there are other questions that you have, you can email directly right here to SDE dot, make sure you put that dot in there, ARPESSER@ct.gov. And so you can direct other questions right there also. Anna, did you have another comment?
No, I was just writing that I will have to log off, but maybe I can just say it.
Okay, I think we're getting ready to log off anyways. Unless anybody has, I'm not going to sit here till 7:30 and hold you here. If you guys don't have anything else that you would like to add.
Thank you for giving us a voice. That was great.
Thank
you for sharing your voice. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question. Is there anything that the State Department, like SERC, would like to be able to do that they're not able to do?
That's
good question.
That is a good question.
I've
I've never thought about that. Have you, Nicole or Missy?
Like if we had a wish list.
Like, do you need funds?
I think if I had a wish list, for me, it would be adding more, you know, educator workforce that's diverse, also are able to speak in Spanish. That would be one of the top ones for me.
I think for me, it'd be working directly with students. We have a youth leadership for equity work that we do and working with students with disabilities. So more opportunities to work directly with our student population, more trainings for students.
And you just got me thinking, Nicole, and this is because of we're doing a PD actually titled like this. I wish we had the opportunity to share, and this is a group effort, something around, you know, who are the Latino students? Who do people think we are, and who do they want us to be if they want us to be something? That was a question at the end that I got, and I was like, oh, I wish we had that. We haven't had that, but hopefully this year we will.
Yeah, now you got me really thinking. I think even like for like the opportunity to work with the adults and the educators around incorporating student voice more often into decision making and just helping them learn what student voice really means outside of just using surveys and things like that. Thank you for the question.
Yep, I was going to say that usually at the Connecticut Association for Boards of Education, which I'm on the board of directors, I always do a workshop on student representatives on boards of education and what they have the ability to do and use their voice for, and they're usually so appreciative of what they didn't know that they could do. And at the same time, I am extremely progressive, so that when that policy was developed for student representatives, there is no grade point average. There are no gatekeepers. There are no teachers that are recommending. Nobody gets tapped on a shoulder. So in the state, it's not very equitable. So there's people that can serve, but sometimes just because they're not of a certain profile, somebody might think they're not going to be so good. And so, you know, they may have a student pulse. So I've been championing that for a very long time, and they've been doing that in Vermont and Maine for years and years and years. And so it's not anything new, but the ability, you know, takes time, and you need a superintendent that believes in it and, you know, helps to shape it too. And so that's really exciting for me to be able to champion, because I've always wanted that to happen for my own daughters. And so I kind of created that here in Old Saybrook, and give that sense on the state level too. And been contacted by some other states on, well, what's your policy look like, and how do we do it, and what does that mean? And sometimes the grown-ups on a board are afraid to talk to kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, so sometimes, you know, they're not so comfortable, and they have to learn that they're a really important resource. And, you know, that's a whole other piece.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else? All right. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. Okay. All right. Very good. If there's nothing else, then I will say good night. I don't think we have to go back into the main room, so I think we're just good to go. I want to thank everybody for sharing. It was a great conversation. Do appreciate that, and I'm sure we will transcribe everything. We will get all of our information over to the State Department so that they have all of your input.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Hi, thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Good
night.
night.
No, mami, este no es.
I'm
Es el
going
que
to
tú tenías
stop
puesto.
recording.
Pero no, pero porque este no.